Hey there, this is Sheila Collins with Succeed with Video. Today I want you to meet Kim Rogers. So, Kim, I always want to start off by telling a little how we met, meet my guest. So I know we met through a mutual friend, and at the time I was hosting a networking event, and I asked you to come. Well, my friend Janelle, just throw her name out there. She's like, you have to meet my friend Kim. She's doing all these wonderful things for Guatemala. You have to come. Let's have her come and share what she's doing. So that's how we met, and I've been following you ever since on social media, and your social media really shows the passion that you love for your country. So I want you to tell us a little bit more about Heart for Guatemala and what you do.
Sure. Yeah, we met right before COVID.
Yes.
I think that was February of 2020, right before the world shut down. I think you were actually my second talk I ever gave.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, really? Well, you're a natural at it.
Yes, I had just bought my house in Guatemala, come home to sell my car, and then
That's right. Yeah, you were going through a major life change.
I was.
Yeah.
So Heart for Guatemala was born out of a divorce, really. I lived here in Houston area for 10 years, had it. My kids, my husband, my pets, my house. Thought I had it all, and I got the surprise divorce, but I had been vacationing to Guatemala for several years as a previous flight attendant. I started out going there when I was a flight attendant, but on vacations, looking for a place to take my sons to Spanish school. Fell in love with the country, fell in love with the people, started sponsoring a student, started helping out after there was a volcanic eruption in 2018. And then, so I was on my fourth trip when things were starting to get weird. My fifth trip, I found out husband's having an affair, going to get a divorce. I was in shock, but that's how Heart for Guatemala started, as just a hobby, vacations, and I needed a new life after my divorce. So I came up with a plan to take a sabbatical and go to Guatemala for a year. But once I finally got down there, I realized I loved it. On my fifth day, I bought a house, and I haven't looked back.
Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot you had bought a house.
On the fifth day, called up my realtor friend and told him what I wanted, and bought the first house I looked at.
So now you're an investor in Guatemala, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Tell me a little bit about the schooling too. Tell me what all are you doing for the people for Guatemala, because you're doing a lot.
Well, Heart for Guatemala is a 501c3 nonprofit started for educational projects. So it became official, after my talk with you, during COVID is when I made it official. Before it was just a hobby project. So it's been about 2.5 years, and it started with supporting two schools, Escuela Integrada and Escuela Las Delicias. So I gave myself 2 years to kind of figure it out. And that was before I gave myself 2 years before I knew that COVID was going to happen. So it's taken a little bit longer, but started out just my thought process was to become a Rotarian and be a public speaker with Rotary clubs, try to get financial support for my school projects. So that's where it started. And from there, developed into, when we got stuck in COVID, and got stuck in the States for 8 months and felt helpless when the country of Guatemala shut down. The borders were completely closed, so I couldn't go back. And then people were actually starving to death because the country was completely closed. There was no buses running, the schools were closed, businesses were closed. People had no way to make money, and people lived day to day there. So my partner Stan came up with the idea to sell coffee because we could do that e-commerce, sell it online, and at least that would provide a little something. So besides my school projects, we sell coffee, and just recently started selling textiles. Like, my whole plan got derailed because of COVID, but now we're really ramping up quickly.
Yeah. So I'm going to go. I didn't realize. So you after COVID, you were here during COVID.
Yes. Came home. I came home in February. COVID started in March.
Met.
Yeah, and I was supposed to be here for 1 month. I had 3 talks, including yours, 3 or 4 talks scheduled. but I had to go fly home to Walla Walla to sell my car that I had bought and get the last of my clothes. And while I was there is when COVID clamped down and Guatemala shut its borders. So then I was stuck there with my parents for 2 months. And then I still had my car and didn't know how long it was going to go on. So ended up driving from Walla Walla, Washington to Seattle to Oregon to California, back to Houston. Still closed. Went on to South Carolina where my daughter was. Spent a month in Charleston, a month in Brevard.
That's how that's you know, I have here that you're an international traveler. So you're a national traveler too.
Yeah. Well, I was a flight attendant for ExpressJet for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
And before that, I went to college in Hawaii for 6 years, was an exchange student in Chile, traveled to, my first international trip was at 14. I went to Europe for a month.
Yeah. So is Spanish the only, you're bilingual? So
Just Spanish.
yeah. So you are an international traveler and founder of an international nonprofit. How has social media helped you to share your passion for Guatemala? I know that I see it because I follow you, but how else has social media helped you? And what are you using? I mean, it's mainly Facebook?
Mainly Facebook, but I'm about to really launch into all the other channels. Social media, I just fell into it because what happened was in 2018, I took a group of 10 to Guatemala just for a vacation. And I was when I sponsored a student, fell in love with the students of Guatemala, and I just had the feeling I need to come back to Houston and talk all my friends into sponsoring students. But right before that, the volcano Fuego had erupted.
Okay.
So June 3rd, 2018. And it was hush-hush in the international news. I mean, I knew it was happening, but I didn't know how bad it was. I had heard maybe 100 people died. Turns out almost 2,000.
Why do you think it was hush-hush?
Because of, Guatemalan relies on tourism, and so the government didn't want people to know.
Okay.
The volcano is actually 11 miles from Antigua, which is the historic capital of all of Central America. Then it was the capital of Guatemala. Then it was destroyed in 1776 and moved to present-day Guatemala City. But today, it's flourishing tourism center, the number one spot in all of Central America for tourism. And so, no, Guatemala didn't want people to be afraid of coming.
Yeah.
And Antigua was not really that affected. They had some ashfall, but it was 3 villages at the foot of the volcano. So when I found out how devastating it was, then I just felt this passion, this need to try to do something. All I could see on Facebook was the need. People had lost their homes, their jobs, their farmers. You know, that whole area was destroyed. It seemed to me that they were starving, and so who's helping them? I didn't know. I had no experience in nonprofit or much of anything other than a few vacations to Guatemala, but I just felt like, oh my gosh, who's helping these people? So I turned to Facebook and didn't know what a live was or anything. My first few videos, I think, were sideways. But I just felt this need to
Your
really
passion.
to try to help.
You had a why, and that's what draws us to do the things that we think, how do we start that? And we do it.
So I just got on and told my friends what's going on in Guatemala, and these people are starving, and this is an international crisis, and why is nobody doing anything? In 2000, I didn't know how many people, but people have died, but people are starving. And I raised a few $1,000s and sent down. So that was how I got started.
So yesterday, she had a coffee meetup with several of her friends, and I tagged along because I've been following her on Facebook since COVID, I guess, since we met. And I could tell the following she has. And that has to be from social media because you've been in Guatemala. And it felt like they were so excited to see you, and they all your items that you brought, they were supporting you by buying them the coffee, everything. So I that tells you how just the simple fact of getting on social media and sharing what needs to be shared, how that can grow and help you, right, and help others.
I think in my case, I've been successful, and I went into all this with no experience, not knowing at all what I know, and I still maybe don't. But I have such a passion for the love of Guatemala and the people and wanting to help them that it just shows through. So I had a 15-year career with ExpressJet. Then my ex-husband didn't like me flying, So I quit, tried to stay home, was super bored, ended up working at Aldi because I loved shopping at
Oh,
Aldi.
I remember that. Yeah.
And Aldi was down the
Yeah.
street. So I worked for 3 years at Aldi. And I was like the front person because, my training was in customer service from Continental Airlines. And so I was the cashier. And when I started going to Guatemala all the time, every customer knew that I was going to Guatemala, and that was our conversation. When you're at Aldi, you're not supposed to talk to the customers because everything's timed and you're supposed to do everything fast. But every customer always asked me, so when you go into Guatemala, have you been to Guatemala? What are you doing in Guatemala? And several of them were giving me money. I've had several customers from Aldi travel with me to Guatemala, and several of them are sponsoring students.
Yeah. So I had to stalk you. You have like 65 people that you've had.
85.
85 people that have actually gone to Guatemala because you have just seeing what you do. Mm-hmm. Nonprofit. So you had never, did you have any experience on what to do or how to do that? How did you find this or how did you figure that out?
So in the divorce process, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never had to work to support myself. I was a wife and a mother, part-time flight attendant. I had a college degree that was 30 years old, but I never really had to use it to support myself. Always worked fun part-time jobs in tourism. My degree was in travel management, business, minor in Spanish. So I worked in hotels or motels, resorts, and airline. But I always thought it was for fun. And even when I worked at Aldi, I'm like, I just work here for fun.
Well, the customers probably saw that. They didn't see us stressed out,
Right.
Someone checking them out who's stressed out and just wants to get them out of there.
All my coworkers were half my age, like my kids' age, and we'd get into it sometimes because I didn't follow the rules. I was always talking to the customers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you don't like what I do, I'll quit. I'll leave you because there's only 2 of us in the store. I'll walk out of here and you can have the store. So anyway, I had no experience in nonprofit. And that's why I said, okay, after the divorce, everyone said, oh, you need to go back to school. You could be a teacher or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even have any computer skills. My skills are so outdated. I haven't worked in an office, since right out of college. I don't even think I had enough. I felt my fear was I don't have enough computer skills to even do well in college. So nervous about that. I mean, I did well when I went to college.
Yeah.
In the 1989 to 93, but I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind in technology. So I'm going to give myself 2 years. I got enough money in the divorce settlement that I could, Guatemala's cheap, so I could live down there for 2 years and give myself time to recover and to volunteer and to get my Spanish back up to par and give myself hopefully some skills. I had a plan to work at a school down there, to volunteer at a school that was run by a nonprofit. And that was my plan. So I never really got that opportunity because COVID. Yeah. Until just actually very recently, in the last 6 months, I finally started volunteering with the school and going into homes to visit the families.
What type of volunteering when you go visit the families? What exactly are you doing with them as far as helping?
I go with the school psychologist and just to do home visits. The school that I'm supporting, Escuela Integrada, is a private school where there's 180 students, and all students have a sponsor from the United States. So they're the average income of a family from that school is about $400 or less. During COVID, it went down to maybe zero, between 0 and 200. So they're extreme poverty.
Yeah.
And so this is what I love about the school. It's been in existence for about 20 years. It's proven successful. Some of the staff members were students at one time. Now, if they didn't have these sponsors and weren't able to go to the school, they would probably be working. Yeah. The average education is only compulsory to 6th grade in Guatemala, but it's not enforced, so a lot of kids drop out
to support the family,
especially right now.
Yeah,
the entire country's closed all schools for 2 full years, so we are really behind.
So they just closed school up completely.
Completely.
Yeah,
well,
I guess so.
Many schools in Guatemala don't even have electricity, let alone Wi-Fi.
I mean, that's that. Yeah, I never thought about that. Well, your pictures make Guatemala look so pretty.
It is a beautiful country.
It's beautiful countries, yeah.
And it's so close to Houston. 2.5 hour flight.
I know. I didn't realize that.
We are neighbors.
I know.
And that was the thought when I was going from Houston on my vacations when I was working at Aldi. That's what my customers got so excited about when I would tell them. They would say, "What are you doing, missionary work?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a missionary. I go there on vacations." They're like, "What is there to do in Guatemala?" I said, "There's so much to do, and it's so close." And at the time, airfare was 300. It goes down to as low as 150 once in a while on United. So then they would get excited. And they're like, "Well, when are you going? Can I go with you?" And that's how I ended up having bringing almost 100 people now
Yeah.
to date. And
Well, I know Janelle and I had planned on going, and then the second or third wave hit. And we're like, well, we'll just wait, I guess, and see what happens. You know, e-commerce, so because you're selling, so many items, and you're doing, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I know that you're here, you went and visited a bookstore for your school, right?
a warehouse.
A warehouse. I'm sorry, a warehouse. And the school books that are going to be donated are going to your school, right? So how are you connecting with these people? I mean, and then with how has e-commerce helped you as far as selling the items that you sell to raise money?
Two different questions there,
Yes.
I think. Okay. The books.
Because I want to make sure I get those books in, because that's a pretty big thing.
Okay. So Heart for Guatemala doesn't really have any projects of its own. I started out thinking I like to speak and I like to fundraise. I want to support. There's so many nonprofits and missionaries in Guatemala already. I can just be the face. I'll be traveling to the U.S. and I can speak and raise money and support projects that are already going on. So in the past, I've done food bags during COVID, built bathrooms for a rural school, donated 120 water filters for the same community, built a playground and donated to an organic farm, which after the playground, now there's 3 schools on that same area. And then I thought, okay, what's next? So I came up with the idea of library. And the library is actually, the first library project is in the school. Escuela Integrada has the library, but no funds for a librarian. So actually, my Rotary Club applied for a district grant, and we got it. So we're going to be able to finish that library soon, as soon as I get back from this trip. Then I had the idea of starting a community library because, believe it or not, Antigua, Guatemala does not have a free community library. So the Echo Farms, where I donated the playground, I went and talked to them. They said they would donate the land. And through the whole travel thing, my friend Chelsea, who has a travel agency, she had a customer come through, and he noticed. He went and visited a school. They needed a library, and somehow he was connected with this nonprofit here in Houston that sends books abroad. So that was yesterday when I went and toured the warehouse. So I got invited to this call and met Peggy. And so yesterday I went. She said, "Yeah, we've got all the books you need. We're happy to box them up and send them down." So now, we're going to have a container library on organic Echo Farms, and it'll be free to the community in Antigua. And we're really excited.
Yeah, I bet you are excited about that. Besides that, are there any other things that you're working on for yourself and for
Yes.
Heart for Guatemala?
Yeah. So we recently, it was hard during COVID, because couldn't really promote tourism because, the vaccinations and the masks and everybody was scared. So we're just starting to promote tourism, getting married February 1st in 3 months and expecting 100 people to come.
There are enough hotels there.
Oh, yeah. It is the tourism capital
Yeah.
center of all of Central America. I think there's 300 or 400 motels, hotels, Airbnbs, probably even more than that in just 9 blocks. So no problem there.
I feel silly, but is it on the beach? I mean, is it off the water? No, okay.
You're thinking of the island of Antigua. Common misconception.
That's what, that's what I'm thinking. Because I'm thinking there has to be a beach. I bet that's gorgeous.
No, there are beaches in Guatemala, but they aren't the prettiest. Antigua is 27 miles from Guatemala City, so it's in the mountains. It's surrounded by 3 volcanoes, 1 active volcano, and it's a town of about 35,000 people.
Have you been there while the volcano's been active?
Oh, yeah. It's active. It's erupting every day.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hey, is there anything you want to share with the audience to come out, to support, to
Sure. Visit my website, heartforguatemala.org. You can order coffee. It's the only female coffee company, all-female coffee company, female growers, which is kind of rare in Central America. So it's private label. It's not my coffee company. We private label through another company. Heart for Guatemala coffee, we have medium, dark, and espresso roast. Beans are ground. And for $20, you can get a bag freshly roasted and shipped from door in Guatemala to your door in less than a week. Comes with a gift bag, which employs more women. There's a lady in Alatenango, which is the community that was affected from the volcano. She sews these gift bags. So that's our number one product. We just started doing textiles. We had the idea to do textiles in the beginning of COVID, but because of COVID being locked out of the country, and then the whole shipping thing, there's no working post office in Guatemala. So we're still figuring out how we can get products brought up. I mean, we travel here every 3 months or so because of Stan's work. So we'll probably just fill suitcases and bring them up and have a friend ship them out.
Yeah.
So I don't sell textiles yet on the website, but we will. And then just recently found a vendor who makes these jade necklaces and bracelets. Jade is the stone of Guatemala. It's only found in, I believe it's Afghanistan and Guatemala. So I've sold quite a few jade necklaces and bracelets on this trip too.
Yeah, well,
So coffee and textiles are
the main, your main thing. Well, I appreciate you coming down here, especially not being used to this traffic anymore.
I never got used to it. That's why I love living in Guatemala. I don't even have a car there. I can walk
I was going to
everywhere.
say, you can walk. And the weather is like this all the time, isn't it?
It's the land of eternal spring.
So, hey, Kim, tell me about this book that I saw you post on social media.
Yeah,
Tell me about your book.
So I'm writing a book. It was inspired by I have a new neighbor, and I started texting her all my contacts. And I thought, geez, it's going to take me forever. I've been there 2 years living, and I've really spent a lot of time on social media learning because we have Facebook groups with a lot of information, and life in Guatemala is just so fabulous for expats. So my book is going to be called something like, what is it? How to Have a Fabulously Frugal Life in Antigua, Guatemala. The Kim Rogers Fabulously Frugal Life in Antigua, Guatemala 2023 edition. So it's all my contacts, and it's not meant to attract more expats because we kind of like it as a secret great place to live. But it's all my contacts of, like, for instance, where I get all my groceries delivered, my massage therapist that comes to the house, the acupuncturist that comes to the house, where I get beautiful roses for $2, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it's telling you how. It's like a tips or advice book on how to be frugal.
Yeah, on how I live a great lifestyle on $1,200 a month in Antigua, Guatemala.
I can't wait for that book. I think I messaged you. I want a copy.
Yep.
When is it expected to come out?
I am going to have that thing published by my wedding, so in 3 months.
Oh, yes, and that's pretty soon.
Yeah. And I'll have an ebook edition.
Good. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again. I really appreciate this, and it's an honor to have you here, especially sharing what you're doing. Because, like I said, I met you, and then COVID happened, and then now that everything's okay, of course, I've opened up. You're starting to get a lot more active, and I just really enjoy your social media.
Oh, thanks. I didn't answer your second question on the channels of social media. So yes,
that's right.
I'm comfortable. I've been doing Facebook. That's really all I was really knew backwards and forwards. But I have had an Instagram page and a LinkedIn and a pin. I've had them all, but I just, there was this lull at COVID fatigue, we would ramp up, start planning stuff, and then another wave of COVID would clamp down. And then I just got kind of in this funk for a while. Like, I don't know, are we ever going to get out of this? Are we ever going to are my dreams going to come true? And then all of a sudden, things started moving forward. So actually just not too long ago, I was talking to my daughter about, she goes, I can help you with all that stuff. Yeah. She's in South Carolina. So, I'm planning when I go back to start making 3 videos a week and do coffee with Kim. Because I think I have kind of a motivational story of what happened to me in midlife. I'm 51, going through a divorce at 48. I was married 28 years, and so I have a lot of things. And the purpose of my nonprofit Heart for Guatemala is to build bridges. I really feel like I'm an ambassador. I was trained by Rotary, of course, trained by Continental Airlines, but I want people to understand more about Central America and how the U.S. Canada, U.S., Mexico, and Central America, as far as also South America. We're all neighbors.
Right.
There's a lot to talk about, and that's what I want to talk about in my YouTube
Good
channel.
for you. Good for you. And I've always encouraged people to, hire it out. Hire it out, and so you won't get stuck in that. I don't know what to do next, or I don't have time for this, or just hire it out if you can. So thanks again for sharing everything, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.